It has been a year since we moved from our large, over 2,000 square foot home to renovating my grandparents' single wide mobile home that comes in right around 1,000 square feet. It has been an experience. We have learned a lot, and I want to share with you today 15 things that I have learned over the past year. So I shared with you guys last year that we were going to be moving, and I took you along with the entire process in our Little House series. I showed you the before, I showed you all of the sweet little things about the house. At that time, I didn't disclose that it was my grandparents' house, but this is and was my grandparents' house. This is where I grew up coming and visiting them, and just have so many precious memories in this house. So after the house had kind of sat vacant for a while and nobody was in here, nothing was being done to it, my family and I decided that it would be a good idea for us to renovate it and for us to live here. So I took you guys along for the entire process. I showed you some of the really charming details. I also showed you some of the dated things that maybe we didn't want to keep around. And then I just kind of showed you step by step a lot of the real raw things about this renovation. Since then, we have continued to make little changes here and there, and the list of things that we still want to do is quite long. You know that if you have a house, that the projects are kind of never ending and things are always changing based on where you are in your life. But moving here has given us a lot of financial freedom. We don't have to pay rent to live here. It has also really given us the chance to kind of stretch our design wings a little bit and make some of those decisions ourselves. So I wanted to share with you the things that we have learned. All right, number one, it's not too small. You just have too much stuff. So whenever we were in the early days of moving, like I said, we moved Memorial Day last year, so it's been a year, and people would ask, how's it going? How's the move going? You know, is it too small? And what I would say to everybody is, it's not too small. We just have too much stuff. And it didn't matter that we had decluttered before the move, and it didn't matter that we were decluttering as we were putting things away. We still just had too many things. Thankfully, we are blessed to have at least a good bit of storage here. It's not excessive, but we do have 2 small closets in our bedroom. We do have a closet in the kids' bedroom, and then we have a shed. So we have some places to put things, and that kind of allows for some of the space that we lost previously with a garage and an attic. So yes, there are those times when the space itself is the issue, but more often than not, it is our stuff that is the main culprit. All right, number 2, just because it has always been this way doesn't mean that you can't change or repurpose it. A lot of you really related to the series that I shared earlier in the year, our small space living series, where I went through one room at a time, one area at a time, and I showed you how I store things and organize things. And in that, I mentioned that you can really change things around, and just because something is intended for this purpose, or maybe it's always been used in this way, does not mean that you are bound by that. So a couple of examples in our house is this little skinny cabinet right behind me. I shared this in the small space living series. This cabinet had a little small half shelf, and it was previously used for some pantry goods and some pots and pans, and I wanted that shelf removed because I had envisioned that this would be a great place to put my baking pans and my muffin tins and store them vertically. This would allow me to pull one out instead of having them all stacked on top of one another and having to upset the whole pile. That ended up being such a good change, and I love this little skinny cabinet. Another perfect example is across the kitchen from me, there was a set of upper and lower cabinets with a countertop. This is where my grandparents had a lot of dishes. They had a microwave on the countertop, but it was seated behind a 2-seater table that had a fold-out leaf. This really worked fine for my grandparents because it was just the 2 of them, and when they had company over, they would pull out the leaf, they would have us sit in the living room, and it worked just fine. But I knew for our family of 4 that it might feel a little cramped. And once we got a 4-seater table in here and it was butted up against the cabinets, it just felt like it wasn't going to work for a bigger family. So I kind of had to trust myself a little bit with that, because when you're talking about creating storage and creating space, To take out 2 sets of cabinets really sounds counterproductive, but it ended up being such a good decision for the space. So we still have storage for our dishes with open shelving. We have a cabinet that we got from the Habitat Restore, and then I painted it to match the rest of the cabinetry. That acts as our coffee bar. And then of course we have our L-shaped banquette, and we ordered this and painted it, and it has room for storage inside for a lot of our kitchen things and our school things. Number 3, organize your underwear drawer. Okay, I know, but just hang with me for a second. Whenever we moved in, there was a lot of organization that needed to happen, and it felt very overwhelming. And sometimes I think we want to start with the big things, and understandably so, because we want to get things moved out of the way. But I noticed that I felt such a difference when I organized those spots that I'm touching on a daily basis, that I am accessing on a daily basis. I hope you are accessing your underwear drawer on a daily basis. But yes, so I organized that drawer and kind of all of my drawers in general. And I just noticed that whenever I'm going to these areas and I'm pulling out exactly what I want, and I'm not having to start my day with just a simple task of getting dressed, becoming almost angry because I can't find what I'm looking for, and then I'm stirring in the drawer and making things worse. I had some box lids and I used those as drawer dividers, and I have everything exactly the way I want it, and I got out the things that don't serve me or that I don't like. And it was just a perfect example to me of how organizing by starting small can really kind of create that domino effect and can help you to push forward in organizing when it feels very hard. It becomes very easy to start that ripple effect, and then once you start to see those changes, it encourages you to move forward. Number 4, you will set off the smoke alarm at least twice a week. So we live in a very small space, and in this shared living room, kitchen, dining area, there are 2 smoke alarms. So you can just count on any time that I am using our griddle pan or anytime I am cooking bacon in the oven, I am gonna set off the smoke detector. The kids have just become used to it, and anytime I'm doing those things, I will just yell out, "The smoke detector might go off," and then it does. Number 5, something that I did not expect is that living in a small space will force you to address the issues that you have within yourself or the issues that you have with the people living in your space. Because you are living in a small space, there's less room for those things to hide. So it's not just a clutter thing, it's not just a space thing, it is also a space for negativity thing. There's just not as much room for that. Sure, you can go to your room, you can go outside, but eventually we're gonna have to deal with these things, whether it's within ourselves or with someone else. And so I have found that living in a small space really helps to create that closeness that maybe sometimes it's difficult to replicate in a larger home. All right, number 6, the less house to clean thing I have found to be a total myth. I clean just as much as I ever have, and maybe more, because all it takes is one person walking in with an armful of stuff one time and dumping it in the kitchen for the house to go from feeling fine to feeling cluttered and chaotic. So that leads me to number 7. A small space will force you to examine your habits. So for example, picking up after yourself or how you enter the house. We have some sort of mantras or proverbs that Abram has developed in his schooling, and those have been really wonderful for us. One of them is "leave it better than you found it." And I have adopted one called "enter well." So whenever we come into the house, from wherever we have been, the shoes go in the baskets by the door, the book bags go in the hook behind the door, lunch boxes get emptied, jackets get hung up, whatever it is, we need to enter well. So living in a small space really forces us to examine those habits because those spaces are so multifunctional. And if we don't start examining those habits, then our stuff sort of bleeds over into the next thing. Which leads me to number 8, if you give a mouse a cookie. It is cleaning up after each individual task can really make such a difference. So when we finish a task with school, we put the things back on the school cart and then we move on to the next thing. When we finish after a meal, we leave it better than we found it. We clean up the plates, we wipe down the table, we sweep the floor, we load the dishwasher. Whenever I do laundry, I try to finish the cycle completely. It doesn't always happen, but I try as much as possible to wash it and then dry it or hang it up to dry and then actually put it away, because otherwise these things are lingering in a space that is already small. Number 9, you absolutely need to know where the water cutoffs are in your house. So in one of my vlogs in the fall or Vlogmas, it's funny now, I can't remember. I will find it and link it down below. We had what could have been a real disaster. I had just tucked the kids into bed and I sat down at the kitchen table to do some computer work, and I heard a loud shh from the kids' bathroom. And I thought, one of them has gotten up to wash their hands, but I thought, let me just go and see, let me make sure they don't need anything. And when I came into the bathroom, water was gushing from underneath the sink, and I panicked. Of course, I didn't think at the moment, because my brain just was not working properly, that there is a quarter turn valve under the sink that I could turn, and I could immediately shut off that water line that way. But all I could think was, I need to shut off the main water to the house. So I ran to the scuttle hole, fell on the way there on leaves. I don't know how I didn't hurt myself. I guess I was just running on adrenaline, and I cut the main water off. So in a matter of maybe 2 minutes, I had this cut off. But if we had not been home, or if I had been asleep, this could have been disastrous. What ended up happening is where the supply valve meets the sink and goes up to supply water to the sink, there is a little metal ring, and it is crimped onto that pipe, and it actually had become worn over time, I think due to maybe some leaks over time, and it just popped off. So when this happens, those supply lines just continue supplying water, but instead of supplying it to the pipe, it is just supplying it to your open house. So know where those water shutoffs are. Make sure that you have a quarter turn valve under every sink, at the laundry, at the dishwasher, anywhere where those supply lines are. Make sure you have those, because goodness, you need to know what to do if something like that happens. Number 10, I never knew how much making those design decisions, picking those things out, and then doing some of the work ourselves, I never really knew how much that would really just nourish my soul and help me to love the space in a way that I didn't anticipate. We've made small changes in our previous homes with paint and with furniture layout and things like that, but we've never really had the ability to paint cabinetry and pick out countertops and take out a wall and, you know, do some of the things that we have done here. And of course, a lot of that we didn't do. Some of that we did, and then some of it we hired out. But it really is incredible to look back and see how the house was before, and I loved it before, and then to look at the house is now, and I love it now, but for a totally different reason and in a totally different way. I'm able to look at the space and see this vision that I had all along, but see the pieces actually come together before my eyes. So putting in the work yourself, making those design decisions, it can really help you appreciate your space that much more. All right, 2 notes on renovating. The first one, number 11, is everything will cost more than you think. And number 12 is everything will take more time than you think. So this goes for any renovation. If you choose to do a lot of the work yourself, then anticipate it taking more time than you think. Maybe even if you hire the work out, anticipate it taking more time than you think. But also, if you hire the work out, plan on it taking a lot more money than you think. And there's all of those little things that you don't think about, little hardware things and little finishing touches. It will always take more money and more time than you think it will. Number 13, there is beauty in moving in when things are almost finished. In fact, when we moved in, we had no cabinet doors. We had no interior doors. The drawers I don't think had been painted yet. We had not put on the hardware. So there were lots of little finishing touches. But there is a beauty to moving in and not having all of those decisions 100% made. If they are not crucial to you living in the space, it can actually be nice to live in it a while and kind of see how you function. And there were multiple things that I thought would work one way and they actually worked another. I had in mind to put all of our small appliances in the banquette across the kitchen, and that's how we started. And then I realized that I was really annoyed every time I had to go over there to get the Instant Pot or get the toaster or get the crock pot. And I realized that I used those things a lot more often than I'm using my casserole dishes and my bundt pan and the waffle iron. So I ended up completely changing that out, and it has been such a good choice. But on paper, it made sense to put the small appliances over there. It didn't seem like a big deal. but those weren't the things that I accessed often. So I ended up switching that, and that's just one example of it can be really fruitful to live in the space a while and really see how you function and then be able to make those changes. Number 14, if I could go back and tell myself one thing throughout the process, it would be your grandparents really would love it, so stop worrying about it. Even with having my family's blessing and encouragement through the entire process, it was still something that was hard for me because I was making changes to this home that I'd seen a certain way for my whole life, and I also wanted to be able to share it with my grandparents, and I couldn't do that. So if I could go back, I would tell myself what everyone else told me, which is that they would really love it and they would give you their blessing. All right, and the last thing that I have learned, number 15, is that we actually haven't lived that differently than we did in our previous homes. I think that you sort of develop a lifestyle and you'll make small tweaks and changes, but you have a family culture. And I think that family culture follows you whether your house is 1,000 square feet or whether it's 2,500 square feet. I think because we are a family who is used to living frugally and we are used to being content and used to not having high demands from our space, I think that that has helped us to really transition into this well, and we really thrive here just as much as we have in any other house. All right, you guys, so those are the 15 things that I have learned as we renovated this small space and then have lived here for the past year. I would love to hear from you down in the comments if any of these you found particularly helpful, or maybe you live in a small space and you have gleaned some little pearls of wisdom for yourself. If you are new and maybe you missed the Little House series, or maybe you missed the Small Space Living series, I am gonna have them linked at the end of this video and in the description box. So please make sure to check those out for more inspiration. Thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you next time.